What's up, everybody? It's your boy Ryan, and this is the Thunder Channel on Nootropics. And for those of you that asked, yes, this is the Thunder Channel. People ask me, is this the Thunder Channel? It is the Thunder Channel on Nootropics. Thanks so much for being with me. I'm going to talk about where I wasted my time on Nootropics. Sounds a little clickbaity, but I'm going to explain. Just give me a second. In the meantime, guys, update on the VTP. It is upgraded. So I basically took the Viking Testosterone protocol off of the market to revamp it a tad, really just to add some things. And we added dietary protocols. We added gonadotropin hacking. We added some more advanced stuff than just elevating free and total tests, because ultimately that's not the whole picture. You've got to do a lot to make it all signal correctly and really get the benefit out of test. So get the new upgraded VTP at livecortex.com if you're a dude that wants to raise test. You guys know the drill. This broadcast is brought to you by the Cortex Nootropic Stack. Powerful pre-made stack. I mean, people have spoken. People just love the Cortex stack, right? There's no stack out there that you can just take a couple capsules and brain turns on within 30 minutes and you're just locked in and want to work. The Cortex stack provides that. Get it at livecortex.com. Better deal though is the double stack, which gets you 2 bottles of Cortex, $24 each. You can find that at the homepage at livecortex.com. And then last couple things. Look, if you're new to nootropics and you're sort of confused by all this and you need help, you really need to get to like the 3-year mark and save some time and not waste years. Get Nootropics Ground Zero. In fact, if I had this video course, it's a video course, when I started, I would have saved myself about 3 years of research and experimentation. Nootropic stacks for the business professional. If you're a business person that wants stacks for the type of productivity that business necessitates. And then if you are a business person as well and have the budget and really fully want to optimize brain function, hormonal function, energy function, oh, it's so fun doing these 3.5-month intensive consult with me, or a 6-month. If you've got the budget, do the 6-month, because ultimately more time equals more stacks, more solidification of what we figured out, etc. Okay, so in the beginning of my nootropics, I wasted about it's a little murky for me now at this point, but so it's like 2008, about 3.5 years on nootropics initially. And I, as you might imagine, like this is why it's the basis of our content and the logic that I put out about nootropics is very methodological, right? There is a method to using nootropics the right way, because they can absolutely bite you. They can absolutely become ineffective. They can absolutely cause weird side effects. You can downregulate receptor function, and you can confuse the shit out of yourself because you've got stacks that are working one day and stacks that aren't working the next day, among many other potential downfalls if you're not using nootropics the right way. So let me run through where I wasted my time on nootropics, exactly how I wasted my time in those first 3.5 years. Number one, I had a base level understanding of what nootropics were doing. I'm just going to move this over a tad bit here. There we go. A base level understanding of what nootropics were doing. So, the extent of my understanding of what was happening was, alpha GPC was increasing acetylcholine. Modafinil at the time, which was like actually popular, like the Dave Asprey's of the world, and I was fussing with it back then. It's just increasing dopamine release. I hadn't even gotten into like orexin neuron function and all the rest of the stuff that it's doing. Chemicals like GABA themselves, increasing brain GABA, lemon balm, increasing brain GABA. Like I just really phenylalanine, tyrosine, dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine. But they're doing a lot more things, and there's a whole bunch of downstream stuff that, this implies or insinuates, or there are true implications of raising these neurotransmitters, not the least of which is like what's happening on the receptor side. Scientists, I guess, and pharma's scientists, whoever they are, and however trustworthy they are, not really trustworthy for the record, have been trying to figure out ligand-induced desensitization for many years. It's like a big part of a lot of the drugs that they have, right? They're forcing a ligand, an inherent ligand, to be binding to a receptor site. You get this desensitization from it. A whole bunch of downstream super negative things happen, and they can't figure that out. I figured that out at this point. But I had a base level understanding of what they were doing. In other words, I just was like, they're increasing acetylcholine or increasing, and that's all I really ever knew. And that's just not the whole picture. That was where I wasted my time in nootropics, not fully understanding not only what nootropics are doing, where they're getting released from, what implications that has downstream, but like where they're binding and what implications that has. Number 2, I didn't know how to properly stack in descending doses. Descending doses. I didn't know how to properly stack in descending doses. So I'm going to explain as I instructed myself to do on this document. So usually the best stacks, they start off with a base. Let's call the base modafinil at 150 milligrams. But then the rest of the synergistic additional components to the stack, which you should have to make a good stack, chemicals that synergize with the base, don't overpower the base, they're not equal to the base. They're just sort of working on similar brain chemistry or compensating for some brain chemistry that's taking place induced by the first chemical, the main primary functional heavy hitter of the stack. But most of the time, good stacks, the doses on whatever else you have, aside from the modafinil, are lower. And they sort of all descend downward in dose quantity to the end. So a good stack might look like 150 milligrams modafinil, 100 milligrams of teacrine, maybe like 50 to 75 milligrams of L-DOPA, just supporting the dopamine because you're forcing the release from the pool. If you're going to bring in like a racetam or something, uber low dose the racetam, 200, 300 milligrams, and then a low dose choline source. This is like one example of descending doses in a stack, and there's plenty of others. I mean, usually when you have a base of a stack, like a racetam as an example, and you're stacking theobromine with it, maybe teacrine, maybe dynamine, maybe like alpha lipoic acid, other chemicals with it, you're taking the dose quantity down. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the secondary compounds are in a lower dose than the first compound, because that's not always possible. But it generally means that they are, the way that they're dosed heads in a downward direction in dose quantity. You know, you sort of just start with 100, and then you've got your second compound at 80, or you have then your third compound at 40, or etc. And that it depends on the scale, what exactly the dose is for certain things. But I didn't know that. So in other words, what I was doing is I'd be stacking like 300 milligrams alpha. I'd be stacking a racetam at like 3 grams per racetam. Was like my favorite back in the day. I'd have alpha GPC at like 300 milligrams, and then I'd like do something stupid and bring in like huperzine A or something at 200 micrograms, which is crazy. That should be dosed at like 50 in that case, or 25. And then like, I don't know, maybe I would have like theobromine as a stimulant there, which really didn't even make sense, but at 100 milligrams. Whereas if I were to put that in, it'd be at like 30 or 40. Okay, I didn't know how to properly stack in descending doses as the stack goes on. Number 3, I did not have strategies to fix my brain after repeated use of one compound and then accompanying fatigue. Perfect example of that is, I would get this somewhat back in the day, but I don't know, my brain is resilient on the dopamine side. And I guess at the time, and I guess now, like I'm eating precursors to dopamine. I'm getting like tyrosine and phenylalanine in my diet. But yeah, like I know many people, and I've consulted with many people, where when they take dopamine release agents like modafinil, they actually feel like crap the next day or the day after. Like for 2 days or something, they just feel crappy, not motivated, not into life, kind of just feeling like they can peruse the web all day and they're not really interested in that. And that is because the release of dopamine being forced by modafinil it's taking from one place, the pool. Anything that's causing an extra release of a neurotransmitter, it's taking from the pool. SSRIs, it's one of the reasons they're so terrible, and that people think serotonin is the enemy, but it ultimately is not. Forcing all that extracellular transmitter, where is it coming from? It's coming from the pool. So I didn't know how to replete pools after taking certain nootropics that were releasing neurotransmitters too excessively. And I would feel crappy and wonder why. And then I'd be like, oh, I'll just rely on nootropics, and then it didn't work. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? I had no idea. Yes, so obviously the obvious one, aside from that dopamine example, would be choline. Like, if you're heavy on the choline release agents, like, you should alter your diet for those 2-3 days that you're doing that. Hopefully the stacks differ between racetams or choline release agents, but you should be altering your diet to bring in more eggs, bring in more beef, bring in more salmon, bring in more whatever has choline in it. I did not understand any of that. Number 4, I did maintenance receptor function. I did not maintenance receptor function. Now, that's a huge part of this. Again, you can create desensitized receptors yourself from nootropics. Like, you don't need a heavy pharmaceutical drug to do that. And what it usually ends up resulting in is a dramatically decreased response from the transmitter that you have, so much so that when you even stop trying to force release of it, it's not binding correctly thereafter. You're like, what? You're left over with the state where you're like fatigued or something's wrong or you can't focus. There's a lot of people like experiencing bad things after certain amounts of time on certain nootropics, and they don't know why. It's receptor desensitization. What I learned is lecithin and all the phospholipids in lecithin is like really, really effective for receptor expression of all types, of all neurotransmitter types. So that's one of the things that I started doing. I also started maintaining like transporter function, because if you could make the transporters, the neurotransmitter transporters, work better and not like get downregulated or get messed up or get binded to in some way where they're impaired, they recycle the neurotransmitter that you're forcing the use of properly, instead of just like this whole depletion dynamic where you end up in a place where you're sort of feeling like crap. And all of that keeps the releasable pools functional, and all of that contributes to better maintenance of the receptor sites. Also, the research chemicals on receptor sites. I mean, back then, 9-methylbicarbonate on the dopamine side was not around. But there are plenty of chemicals out there, supplement-wise and or research chemical-wise, that are shown to modify in an upregulatory way some of the dopamine receptors. So I didn't know about that back then, and that was a huge mistake where I was essentially wasting my time. Number 5 is a big one for a lot of people that are somewhat new or a year in or so to using nootropics. I believe the sole limitless stack theory in the absence of other limitless stacks, okay? So I believe the sole limitless stack theory in the absence of other limitless stacks, influenced by like, no doubt, Limitless with Bradley Cooper, and just this notion that I could have, like, all I have to do is find the limitless stack. I actually spent time trying to find that, and I found it many, many, many times, and then it would stop being, as effective as it needed to be. I didn't realize that I had to basically create an entire book of 300 limitless stacks, right? It's like stacks that turn my brain on in particular ways for certain tasks, getting into scheduling. I had no level of nuance back then, and I absolutely was wasting my time. There is no sole limitless stack. It just does not exist. You'll probably have a stack that's like raging, ripping hot for 2 to 7 days or something. I don't know, 14 days max, but ultimately then you start running into some of these issues that underlie the previous 4 numbers. Number 6, I relied solely on nootropics and not my baseline. I relied solely on my nootropics and not my baseline. It's like when I realized I can perform better than I ever had, or perform like better than normal, I sort of just let my baseline go to shit. Like, I just didn't care about it. I didn't monitor it. My way of thinking was like, whatever, if I don't sleep well, find nootropics. Like if I wake up groggy or something, nootropics. If I take too much melatonin, I feel groggy, nootropics. Like if I do a heavy workout and something's wrong and I feel crappy, nootropics. When like really I had to like look at cortisol and look at the intensity of my workouts and look at my caloric intake and look at my sleep and look at my testosterone and all this other stuff, right? Like physical energy, elements of physical energy. I had to understand my blood glucose, make sure that was good. I mean, there was a time where I was eating like absolute crap and just relying on nootropics to try to get my brain working better. And though it worked somewhat, it was like not as potent as it could be. And I just wasn't paying attention to my baseline. And that was a huge mistake I made. Nootropics are not the cure-all to your energy problems. You shouldn't be, the wrong question always gets asked in a lot of forums these days. You shouldn't be asking the question, what's the best nootropic for fatigue? I don't want to be demeaning or anything, but what the fuck are you talking about? What is your fatigue? Where is it coming from? Well, how is it being created? Why aren't you looking at that? And nootropic is, you can't use them as band-aids. The best way to use the class of chemicals called nootropics is to optimize the hell out of your baseline, and then you take yourself above this really, really good baseline of like good energy and functionality with nootropics. It's really the only way you actually get to consistent limitless like states where you can perform like a beast, where you're incredibly good at whatever it is you do, whether it's gaming or your business, you're extremely productive or whatever. You gotta optimize your baseline, okay? So maybe a little clickbaity. I wanted to get you guys in here, but yeah, man, for 3.5 years I wasted my time absolutely on nootropics, and it was a mistake. Like, had I known what I know now back then, I would have gotten a lot better results. Mind you, even using nootropics in a really non-methodological way back then, I still fast-tracked in my old business, because that was around the time where I was like running this technology company and took it to like above $250,000 in sales quickly. Like we doubled our sales in a year because like that was heavy nootropics usage year for me, and I was just performing extremely well, thinking a lot, and I'd like go run the company, go home, eat dinner, drink a beer, and then I'd fucking work until midnight. It just quickly grew the company. So you can get away with it, but it's not good. You got to execute all these things, and this is where I wasted my damn time. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. It has been great hanging out with you. Remember, VTP. For those of you that are guys and trying to raise tests, I mean, I've been through all of the programs that are out there. I have experimented with every single compound you can think of to try to raise tests. I even had like the foolishly this singular approach chemical. Oh, maybe I'll take Tonkat Ali, or maybe I'll take Panax ginseng to increase luteinizing hormone, or maybe fenugreek will work for me, or I just need to up my vitamin D. It's a combo of things. But we took the VTP off the market, upgraded it, brought in dietary protocols, and really hacking the systems in a nuanced way to make sure the test actually signals correctly and that you really get the benefit from it. I'm thinking about creating basically like a general like male sexual function optimizing thing, or an EQ optimizing protocol that's like way more advanced than just citrulline or whatever. In the meantime, VTP, livecortex.com. Business people. Look, if you need productivity, if you need brain function to want to do what it is you want to do, and even if you don't want to do it, if you force yourself to sit down and do work, if you want your brain to work in a way that is exceptional, that allows you to just claw through heavy amounts of work that you know you need to do, either get the 6 months if you have the budget, longer time the better, or the 3.5 month intensive. These are hands-on nootropics, research, chemical, energy, hormonal optimization, results-driven consults with me. We pretty much work together, sometimes daily, but we're communicating throughout the week a lot. There's a lot of stack formulation we're doing, a lot of experimentation, a lot of adjustment, finalization, scheduling, just full-on brain optimization. Work with a specialist. Do it at livecortex.com. Go get those consults. You guys know the deal about the rest of the stuff. Go buy some Cortex. Ground zero if you're new to nootropics. Nootropic stacks for the business professional if you just want stacks that are aimed at productivity. And all the rest of our killer products at livecortex.com. Live streams coming soon. Live streams over booze coming soon. Live streams over coffee coming soon. I've been moving around a lot. I was in Florida 2 weeks ago, so I haven't really had the opportunity to do live streams. There's been a lot of stuff going on with business and clients, etc. But we're going to be back to them. We're going to be back in action. We'll be back. Talk to you next time.